The moving stones of Death Valley. Have you ever heard about stones that move on their own? Yes, actually heavy rocks, some weighing hundreds of pounds, slowly sliding across the desert floor, leaving long trails behind them. No one is pushing them, no animals, no humans, nothing. Yet they move. This strange mystery has puzzled scientists, travelers, and explorers for almost a century. Today I am going to tell you the full story of the moving stones of Death Valley. Where it happens, how it happens, when it started, and why it's still so fascinating. Death Valley is a place of extremes. It's not only the hottest place in North America, but also one of the most remote places. The mystery of moving stones here adds to the desert's almost supernatural reputation. Visitors often call it the desert that plays tricks on the mind. Let's start simple. Imagine the earth spinning in space. You zoom in, you see North America. Zoom in more, you see the United States. And then there it is, California. These moving stones of Death Valley are located in a place called Racetrack, Playa, inside Death Valley's National Park, California. Racetrack, Playa is a dry lake bed about 3,700 feet above the sea level. Death Valley is one of the hottest, driest places on earth. In summer, the temperature can reach 50 degrees Celsius or 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a desert of extremes, barren mountains, salt flats, and a place that feels almost alien. The nearest popular point is Ube crater, and to reach Racetrack Playa, you need to drive on rough and unpaved roads. And deep inside this harsh land lies a flat, dry lake bed called Racetrack Playa. This playa is about 3 miles long, 2 miles wide, and looks like a giant cracked floor of mud, empty, white, and mysterious. It's here that the rocks move. In the middle of the Racetrack Playa stands a dark rocky outcrop called the Grandstand, which looks like an island in a pale sea of clay. The playa is so flat that across its entire length, the difference in height is less than 2 inches. This incredible flatness is one reason trails are so clearly visible. At sunrise and sunset, the cracked mud glows golden. At night, the sky above is one of the darkest in the United States, perfect for stargazing. Imagine walking this dry lake, you suddenly notice a big rock sitting in the middle of the flat ground, and behind it, a long trail carved into the mud, like the rock has been dragging itself across the desert. Some trails are straight, some curve, some zigzag, even making sharp turns. And the most shocking part is, sometimes two rocks travel together side by side, and then one suddenly changes the direction. This is not something people noticed yesterday. The mystery goes back to at least the early 1900s, when travelers reported seeing these strange rock trails, but no one ever actually saw the rocks moving. They only saw the tracks left behind. Some trails stretch over 1,500 feet. Stones can weigh anywhere between a few pounds to over 700 pounds. People often give names to famous stones like Karen or Mary Ann, because they have been studied for decades. So of course, theories have been started. People thought maybe earthquakes pushed them, some said wind could roll them, others believed it was magnetism or even something supernatural. The problem is, many of these rocks are huge, weighing up to 300 kilograms. Wind alone could not just blow them across the ground. Earthquakes maybe, but the trails were too organized. Then is it because of magnetism? No, the rocks are not magnetic. For decades, the rocks were a scientific mystery. Visitors came, scientists scratched their heads, but no clear answer. Local legends said some spirits guided the rocks. Others joked about aliens playing games in the desert. Even serious scientists admitted it was one of the strangest natural puzzles in the US. Park rangers themselves could not explain it for decades. In the 1940s, geologists began serious studies. They mapped the rock trails, measured them, and even marked some rocks to track them. But still, no one saw them moving. In the 1970s, a pair of geologists, Robert Sharp and Dwight Carey, actually tagged 30 stones and checked them regularly over 7 years. They discovered that the rocks really did move. Some traveled over 200 meters, but again, they never caught the movement in action. Then in the 1990s, satellite tracking and GPS technology came into play. Researchers placed GPS on the rock. They waited years. They checked again. Still no live movement caught. Can you imagine the frustration? The rocks moved, but always when no one was watching. Sharp and Carey even gave the rocks nicknames like Hortense and Mary Ann, and watched their trials change over the years. Some stones moved several times in one year, while others did not move at all, showing how unpredictable the phenomenon was. Finally, in 2014, a team led by Richard Norris and James Norris cracked the mystery. They used time-lapse cameras and GPS trackers. One winter morning, they finally saw it happen. Here is what they found. In winter, after rain, Racetrack Playa sometimes fills with a shallow layer of water. During freezing nights, thin sheets of ice form on the surface. By mid-morning, sunlight melts the ice, breaking it into floating panels. Gentle breezes then pushes the ice sheets, and the ice pushes the rocks, sliding them across the soft, wet mud at a speed of just few inches per second. The rocks finally had an explanation, not wind alone, not earthquakes, but the rare combination of water, ice and wind. The first recorded movement they captured showed rocks sliding over 200 feet in just a few minutes. The ice panels were surprisingly thin, only about a quarter of inch, 7 mm thickness, but strong enough to move rocks weighing hundreds of pounds. Now you might say mystery has been solved, right? But not so fast. Even though science explained the process, the rocks only move under perfect conditions. Rains must fall in the desert, nights must be cold enough to freeze water, and wind must blow just right. These conditions are so rare that most people will never see the rocks move with their own eyes. So even today, if you visit Racetrack Playa, you will see trails and rocks, but almost certainly not the rocks moving. To the human eye, it still feels like magic. Some scientists estimate that the right conditions for movement only happens once every 3 to 10 years. Visitors often report a strange feeling walking among the trails, as if the stones are frozen in mid-motion. Why does this matter? Well, it shows us something about nature. Even in the harshest, driest, deadliest desert, tiny interactions, wind, water, ice, can create a phenomenon so mysterious that it stumps us for decades. It also shows how patient science has to be. It took nearly 100 years from the first reports until cameras finally captured the rock sliding. And there is another reason these rocks tell us about Earth processes. Similarly, sliding patterns may exist on the other planets like Mars, where ice and dust interact. So Death Valley stone are not just a local oddity, they may be a small window into a planetary science. NASA scientists have been studied Racetrack Playa because they believe similar process could explain strange surface features on Mars and even on Pluto. The phenomenon shows how fragile and interconnected natural forces are. A little water, a thin sheet of ice, and a gentle breeze, all combining to move stones weighing hundreds of pounds. Indigenous people like Timbisha, Shohone have lived in the Death Valley region for centuries. While there are not widely published native myths specifically about the moving stones, the desert itself was often seen as a place of power and spirits. Many tribes believed certain landscapes held spiritual energy, and the idea of moving rocks fit perfectly into those mysteries. Some early travelers described them as cursed stones or said they were moved by spirits of the deserts. What locals and other travelers say? Ranchers, miners, and explorers who stumbled across Racetrack Playa in the early 1900s told stories of haunted rocks that wandered when no one was looking. Some even warned newcomers, don't camp too close to the playa at night or the stones might follow you. Local desert guides used to spin tales that the rocks moved because of the magnetic fields buried beneath the earth or because of ghosts of miners who died searching for gold. Now, before you pack your bags and dream of standing where the mysterious stones slide across the desert floor, let me tell you something important. The Racetrack Playa is beautiful, but it can also be dangerous. The ground here can heat up nearly 80 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt your shoes if you stand too long. Visitors who come unprepared risk of heat strokes, dehydration, and sometimes worse. Over the years, tragedies have happened here. The most chilling case is 1996, when a family of 4 German tourists, 2 adults and 2 children, entered Death Valley in July. They wanted to explore the wilderness, just like many adventurous travelers. But their rental van was later found abandoned, stuck in the sand near Anvil Canyon, not too far from the path that leads towards the Racetrack Playa. 4 years, no one knew what happened to them. Search teams combed the desert, but they were gone without without a trace. It was not until 2009, more than a decade later, that their remains were finally discovered. The conclusion: they had tried to walk to a safety under the burning desert sun. No water, no shade, and temperatures soaring above 45 degrees Celsius. They never made it out. They had died of heat exposure and dehydration. Their story is now one of the most tragic reminders of how unforgiving Death Valley can be. And they are not alone. Even in recent years, visitors have collapsed in the heat. In July 2023, a man was found dead in his car after suffering from heat stroke when the temperature outside was 52 degrees Celsius. In 2021, a hiker from California collapsed and died on one of the trails when the heat climbed past 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Park rangers say it again and again: in summer, it's not a question of if you will overheat, how fast. And then there is the journey to Racetrack Playa itself. The road is rough, remote, and unforgiving. Rangers often warn your car can survive the racetrack or your tires can. Not both. Flat tires are common, engines overheat, and cell phones are useless. Imagine being stranded in that silence with no way to call for help. That's when heat stroke can turn a dream trip into a nightmare. But perhaps the greatest tragedy here is not about people, it's about the land itself. In 2016, vandals drove their truck across the fragile surface of Racetrack Playa, carving deep scars into a place that had stood untouched for centuries. They even stole some of the mysterious moving stones. Scientists and nature lovers were heartbroken. The marks left by those tires may take decades to fade. If they ever do, a reminder that human carelessness can wound nature more deeply than any storm. And then, of course, there are the stories, the old legend. Travelers were whispered that the stones were cursed, that anyone who lingered too long on the playa at night may never come back. Today we know the science behind the sliding rocks, but still, when you stand alone in the silent desert with no sound but the wind, it's easy to feel the weight of those old warnings. So yes, Racetrack Playa is a magical, but it's also a place that demands respect for its dangers and for its mysteries. Now let's say after hearing all this, you feel inspired to see Racetrack Playa with your own eyes. That's great, but here is my advice. Timing is everything. The best time to go is between late fall and early spring, November through March. During these months, the daytime temperatures are comfortable, usually between 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. The nights though can get icy cold, sometimes dropping below freezing, but that's actually good because those freezing nights are what sometimes create the thin sheets of the ice that help the stones move. If you are lucky, winter is when you might just witness the mystery in action. But whatever you do, avoid summer. From May through September, Death Valley turns deadly. Temperatures can soar past 45 degrees Celsius and on some days even higher, more than 50 degrees Celsius. And here is another piece of advice again. To reach Racetrack Playa, you will need a high clearance 4x4 vehicle. The road is rough, full of sharp rocks, and cell phones don't work out there. Carry plenty of water, at least 4 liters per person per day, and bring a spare tire too. And if you can plan, arrive in the early morning or late in the afternoon. Not only will the temperatures be cooler, but the golden desert light makes the playa looks even more surreal. So remember, visit in the right season, go prepared, and respect the desert. That way you will not only be safe, you will get to experience the magic of the moving stones the way nature intended. When you stand on the playa at sunset, the long shadows of the stones stretch across the desert like arrows pointing to the unknown. It's a reminder that Earth is alive in a ways we don't always see, and that patience can uncover wonders hidden in a plain sight. And that's the beauty of nature mysteries. Even when explained, they still feel magical. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to like, share, comment and subscribe, because the world is full of secrets. I will be here to tell you the next one. Thank you.